Okay, so I have been a shithead weeb for a long time. And honestly, after watching anime for years, I kind of felt like I had seen it all. That's not to say I don't still like anime and occasionally watch shows, but for me, a lot of enjoyment of watching anime was in the action scenes, the super hyped up battles, the power progression, and the sheer swag of steamrolling kids, one-shotting them. Just, delicious. And sadly, there aren't a lot of high budget shows like that. And even then, my attention span has completely died recently, and I've found myself less willing to sit still for 30 minutes to watch an episode, let alone seasons of a show to get that feeling. So I turned to manga and found loads of super great comics that filled that void. And in the middle of those travels, I found webcomics. Webcomics have become my favorite time sink for the past few years, and I felt like if you found yourself looking to fill that same void, I could recommend some of my favorite webcomics. I'm only going to give 5 in this video, and if people end up liking it, I might make another since this is not normally what I do. So, either way, here are 5 webcomics I think you should read. First webcomic is going to be Murem Login. It is one of the shorter webcomics on this list with only 56 chapters, but it's got some great action and it's very much at the start of its story. Murem Login is the story of a guy who finds a VR capsule where if he dies in the game, he dies in real life. Okay, so it's kind of basically SAO, but where it differs is that he's the only outsider or player who is present in the game, and everybody else is an NPC in a Chinese martial arts era society. The NPCs act like real people and are essentially, which helps the main character grow both in power and mentally, which helps because the power he gains in game he retains when he returns to the real world, which is useful since outside the game the world has dungeons that get cleared by hunters for money and rewards. The main character, Jin Tae-kyung, is a low-level hunter at the start, and seeing him progress, becoming more mature and more powerful as he continues through the in-game society, and seeing that affect his real life is very satisfying. The art is great, and the comic has some super cool moments and some very funny moments as well. Like I said before, the story is still very much in its early stages, and there's a lot of room for growth. I suggest giving it around 5 to 7 chapters, and if you aren't enjoying it by then, move on. Okay, so keeping in the martial arts genre, we have Peerless Dad. Peerless Dad is one of my favorite comics. You know how in anime the main character will like hide their power because they like, I don't know, want to keep it secret, but it's really just because they want to flex on everyone when they bust the move later on in the arc. Yeah, so Peerless Dad is kind of like that, except the main character, No is his name, is unaware of how powerful he actually is because he could never beat his master. Meanwhile, his master tells him that he himself isn't even particularly powerful and is like merely a wanderer with no name for himself in like the martial arts realm. Uh, and his master warns No to never step into the world of Murim, which was filled with powerhouses who can fly through the skies and do all sorts of crazy stuff. Meanwhile, No meets a beautiful woman who he ends up marrying, but unfortunately she dies in childbirth. She dies in childbirth, giving birth to triplets. Heartbroken, No decides to become the best father possible to his children, making sure that they never have to work a day in their lives, wanting them to become scribes and academics. Determined to give his children this life, he finds a job as a gate guard where his employer, after testing him, realizes how powerful he actually is and keeps sending No out on these missions that are extremely difficult and dangerous, but in exchange, they gives No's children immense benefits in their education and early childhood. Seeing No's relationship with his children is just super sweet, and all the while having them idolize him as being the greatest dad and most powerful of all of everyone that they see, and them being completely right about it is just great. The comic has a ton of really well done action, really well done comedy, and I cannot recommend this enough. If you don't like it after 10 chapters, however, I just suggest dropping it, but I really do suggest you give this one a try. Okay, so I just put this on the list because it's pretty basic as far as webcomics go, as it is so incredibly popular. But Solo Leveling, it's got beautiful art. Some dude gets a leveling system in real life and becomes super OP as like a S rank hunter. It's edgy, its art is incredibly next level, and pretty much everybody who likes action will like this. It's working through its second season right now, and if you haven't already got around to checking it out, it's really worth your time. Not a lot to say here. It's just really good, so go check that out. Okay, so beginning after the end is kind of your typical isekai. A super powerful Sword King guy in a previous life gets reincarnated as a baby named Art in a magical world. Because of his knowledge of his previous world's power system, having reached the pinnacle of it and being an expert, Art quickly learns the magic system and goes out into the world, which is not as generic as it sounds, like in a lot of isekai style stories. While powerful, the series does a really good job of not making Art overpowered from the jump. He's strong relative to his age group, but not necessarily in the overall world. He also isn't focused on being a harem protagonist, while also being completely oblivious to the girls falling in love with him. Art himself enjoys the feeling of growth and progression in his power, and the base story is a lot like Mushoku Tensei, although the protagonist doesn't share, a lot of the same mental blocks or perversions that Rudy has in that story. The story is, as a whole, pretty wholesome and has just entered into its second season, where Art goes to Zyrus Academy, and I am a sucker for Magic School arcs, so I am with this comic for the long haul. Read 5 chapters, and if you don't like it, move on. Last but not least on our list, a returner's magic should be special. Blah, should be special. The story is about Desir Armon, one of 6 survivors who finally defeat the Shadow Labyrinth that had destroyed nearly all of humanity. Desir is by far the weakest of them all, muses about how lucky he was to survive despite his inadequacies as a mage. As him and his friends celebrate their victory and think about finally being able to return to the real world, a dragon arrives, wiping the group out. However, instead of dead, Desir finds himself back in time right as he enrolled in the premier magic academy in the nation Hyperion. There he faces the classes system that forced him to remain a mere two-circle wizard that he was in his previous life, and works to prepare himself and humanity for the incoming disaster of the Shadow Labyrinth. This probably has the least action of all of these, although the action that is present is still really good and there is still a lot of it. The art in this comic is also great and unique. Both of these points being said, the story is also, in my opinion, very engaging, and Desir really walks that like mysterious line of being back in the past and trying to prepare people as well as gathering this group of friends very, very well. I say give the story 10 chapters. If you don't really like where the story is going, drop it, move on, because 10 chapters in the story really gives you all you need to know. All right, those are the 5 I chose for this video. Let me know what you think in the comments and leave a like and tell me if you want more.